Panoramic visuals of Ethiopia's landscape, Addis Ababa, and Tigray region. The Ethiopia Tigray conflict, a tragic and brutal civil war, has caused immense human suffering, international concern, and significant political upheaval. In this video, we'll take you through the history of the conflict, the current situation on the ground, and the key players involved. Historical background: Ethiopia's modern history, maps of the regions. To understand the conflict, we need to dive into Ethiopia's complicated political landscape. Ethiopia is a country of diverse ethnic groups, with the Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) playing a central role in its politics for decades. 1974 Ethiopian Revolution and rise of the Derg regime. In 1974, Ethiopia's monarchy was overthrown by the communist Derg regime. After years of brutal rule, various rebel groups, including the TPLF, united to overthrow the Derg in 1991. This victory led to the formation of the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front (EPRF), a coalition in which the TPLF held significant power for decades. Scenes of Meles Zenawi's leadership. The TPLF's influence was paramount under Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, but when Abiy Ahmed became Prime Minister in 2018, things began to change. Root causes of the conflict: Abiy Ahmed's reforms, Nobel Peace Prize acceptance. In 2018, Abiy Ahmed came to power with promises of reform, reducing the TPLF's influence. His peace deal with Eritrea won him the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019, but it alienated the TPLF, who saw his moves as a threat to their power. Tensions rising in Tigray, Abiy Ahmed addressing parliament. By 2020, tensions between the Tigray region's leadership and the central government boiled over. The TPLF held regional elections in defiance of Abiy's government, setting the stage for a military confrontation. Military clashes starting in November 2020. In November 2020, following an alleged attack on a federal military base by Tigrayan forces, Abiy Ahmed launched a military offensive against the TPLF. This marked the beginning of a brutal conflict that quickly escalated. The Ethiopia Tigray War. Bombing campaigns, refugee crises, fighting between federal forces and Tigrayan troops. The war initially seemed to favor the Ethiopian government. Federal troops, supported by Eritrean forces and regional militias, captured Tigray's capital, Mekelle, within weeks. However, the conflict soon devolved into a prolonged and devastating war, with the Tigrayan forces launching a major counteroffensive in mid-2021. Tigrayan soldiers retaking cities and the subsequent government airstrikes. Tigrayan forces managed to regain control of much of the Tigray region and even pushed into neighboring regions, such as Amhara and Afar. Both sides have been accused of atrocities, with widespread reports of mass killings, sexual violence, and famine being used as a weapon of war. Humanitarian crisis: displaced people, aid workers, and famine-stricken areas. The conflict has created a catastrophic humanitarian crisis. Thousands of civilians have been killed, and over 2 million people have been displaced. With blocked humanitarian aid routes, famine threatens millions, especially in Tigray, which has been largely cut off from essential supplies. Statistics on food insecurity, refugee displacement, and international aid efforts. Despite calls for peace and international mediation, the conflict has continued to devastate the region. The United Nations has called for unimpeded humanitarian access, but both sides have made it difficult for aid to reach those in need. Who are the key players? Map of Ethiopia with regions marked and key leaders' profiles. To understand the conflict fully, let's break down the key players involved. Ethiopian government and allies. Ethiopian federal government led by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, the central government has deployed its military and allied regional forces to fight against the TPLF. Eritrea, Ethiopia's northern neighbor, has sent troops to fight alongside Ethiopian forces, seeing the TPLF as a common enemy due to past hostilities between Eritrea and Tigray. The Amhara militias have fought alongside Ethiopian government forces, partly due to territorial disputes with Tigray over border areas. Tigray Defense Forces, TDF, and allies. The Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, which once ruled Ethiopia, now leads the armed resistance in the Tigray region, fighting to regain control and secure regional autonomy. In a surprising alliance, the TPLF has joined forces with the Oromo Liberation Army, OLA, an ethnic Oromo insurgent group, as both groups share a common opposition to Abiy Ahmed's government. Profiles of key leaders, including Abiy Ahmed, Debretsion Gebremichael, TPLF leader, and Isaias Afwerki, Eritrean president. International reactions and interventions. UN meetings, African Union peace talks, footage of protests and international aid shipments. The international community has expressed growing concern over the humanitarian situation and potential war crimes. The African Union has attempted to mediate peace talks, while the United States and European Union have imposed sanctions on individuals involved in the conflict. However, diplomatic efforts have so far failed to end the violence. UN resolutions, African Union peace efforts, and international pressure. Western nations have pushed for peace, but geopolitical interests and Ethiopia's strategic importance in the Horn of Africa have complicated foreign intervention. Meanwhile, the UAE and Turkey have been accused of supplying drones and arms to Ethiopian forces. Current situation, 2024. Scenes of relative calm in some areas, ongoing clashes, and displaced families. As of 2024, the situation remains fragile. Following a ceasefire agreement in late 2022, there have been attempts to secure lasting peace, but skirmishes continue, and the humanitarian crisis is far from over. Ethiopian government officials and TPLF representatives in peace negotiations. While the violence has somewhat subsided, especially after Tigrayan forces withdrew from contested regions, lasting peace has yet to be achieved. Political tensions remain high, and rebuilding the war-torn regions will take years. Future outlook and impact on Ethiopia. Peace rallies, reconstruction efforts, and Ethiopian civilians discussing hopes for the future. The Ethiopia Tigray conflict has not only ravaged the northern regions but has also deeply impacted Ethiopia's future. Ethnic tensions, political divisions, and the scars of war will take years to heal, if not longer. The conflict has also strained Ethiopia's relationships with neighboring countries and international allies. End with a hopeful tone, showing peace talks and efforts to rebuild the country. Only time will tell whether Ethiopia can recover from this devastating civil war, but the road to peace and stability remains long and uncertain. Thank you for watching. We have some amazing videos coming up, so stay tuned for more updates on global geopolitics. And make sure to hit the subscribe button for more.